the scriptures talk about we should clothe ourselves with humility. And I just want to let you know that Josiah Howard is one of those men that's a true warrior, but you'd never know it by talking to him. He's a gentle, humble fellow. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Josiah. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Lifepoint Church.
Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be with you guys. I really like what you guys have done to this place. It's very cool. Thank you so much for letting me be here. I know a lot of you, but there are a lot of new faces. My name's Josiah. I'm married to Chelsea. I'll embarrass her. She is Andy and Toby's niece. So anyway, it's just such an honor to be here, to be able to share with you guys. The text that I'm preaching on today is so precious to me, and I'm just so excited that we get to talk about it. The premise of my sermon this morning is this, that our level of peace is contingent upon and directly correlated to the level of confidence we have in our hope. The level of peace we have is directly correlated to the level of confidence we have in our hope. And by peace, I don't mean that everything is going great, that everything is perfect, that everything is turning out like we thought it would. By peace, I mean that deep inner sense of assurance that it's going to be okay and that you can move forward. And the way you find out what your hope is by asking yourself the question, what makes me say it is or it isn't going to be okay? Right? If you come to a situation in life and you're like, all right, it's going to be all right, because that tells you what your hope is. And if your level of confidence is very great in that hope, you will have some peace. And if not, you won't. Let me give you an example. I was flying this week, so it's a aviation example. Okay, let's say you get on a plane, you sit down, you take off, and then you get some severe turbulence, right? The pilot comes over the intercom, and he says, guys, it's going to be okay. Don't you worry, okay? My name is Asher Howard. That's my son. I'm 2 years old, and the buttons up here are awesome. And I'm pushing them and pushing them, okay? How would your level of peace be there, okay? Let's compare it. You get on a plane, you take off, you hit some severe turbulence. The pilot gets on, and he goes, guys, it's going to be okay. Don't worry, I'm a pilot, right? I've flown this flight 500 times. And I've done it with this plane, and we always hit turbulence here. It's no big deal. It's just the wind. For the sake of my silly example, let's consider a third scenario, all right? Get on a plane, go up, hit some severe turbulence, and the pilot gets on. Hi, guys. Don't worry. It's all going to be okay. It's Superman. And I have built an indestructible plane, and you're flying on it. And if just in case that goes wrong, I can fly myself, I can carry this plane, and I will personally guarantee you that nothing bad will happen to you. I'll rescue you, right? Why is it that we have different levels of peace in each of those three scenarios, right? If you were on the Superman flight, you wouldn't be scared, you'd be excited. You're like, I get to fly with Superman, right? If you're on the pilot flight, you'd probably have a high level of confidence in your hope, the pilot, because he's done it so many times. And you would only be a fool if you thought my son could fly the plane. And you would have no peace, right? It's because our level of peace is correlated to the confidence we have in our hope. This morning, we're continuing on a series that you guys have been going through called Adjectives. And it's using words that ought to describe Christians, but oftentimes don't, right? And if you're anything like me, peaceful should be a word that describes Christians, right? Because we have a hope in God that ought to exhibit utter confidence, right? Because God is on our side. But if you're anything like me, my peace goes up and down and up and down and up and down, because so often I place my confidence, I place my hope in things that are not God. How are you doing with peace this morning? Right? If you're like me, so often a situation comes up and I say, it's going to be okay because oftentimes as a people pleaser, it's because such and such person thinks I'm doing great. My wife thinks I'm doing good. My boss thinks I'm doing good. My kids love me, right? Or it's my circumstances. I'm not as bad as that person, so I'm okay. Or my bank account is such that I'm okay. Or my most recent success, right? I did a good job with my kids today. I'm going to be all right. Can you relate with that? What are some of the reasons in your mind that you say it's going to be okay? This morning, we're going to take a look at the word peaceful. And the psalmist in Psalm 23 is going to tell us 3 keys to having a high confidence in your hope in God. Right? Because as Christians, if we're ever going to have any semblance of peace in our lives, we must place our hope in Jesus. So if you have your Bibles, open with me to Psalm 23. This is one of my favorite passages. It's so often read that a lot of times we can miss the profound truth in it. So I encourage you this morning to read this text with fresh eyes, as if you were reading it for the first time. And David is going to show us 3 keys to having high confidence in your hope in God. And these keys will lead to some peace in your life. Let's begin at the beginning. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Let's pause there. The first key that David gives us for having confidence in our hope in God is knowing that we can be peaceful because God provides for us. God provides for us. What does he say? He paints this picture, right, of some sheep chilling in a field, hanging out. There's plenty of food, green pastures. There's plenty of great water to drink, still waters. Those sheep are restored in their soul. I mean, they are doing great. And he leads them in paths of righteousness for his own namesake. He knows where he's taking them. He's not going to lead them off a cliff. He's not going to lead them into a pack of wolves. The shepherd knows how to take care of his sheep. And David is saying, God is my shepherd. And just like he takes care of those sheep, he'll take care of me too. The first key to our peacefulness, to having a high confidence in God, is to know that he provides for us. And the key to this in this whole passage is the first verse. And I don't want us to miss it. The Lord is my shepherd. And you know what that makes David say? This next sentence is astounding. I shall not want. Right? It's almost unbelievable that he can say that, because if you're anything like me, I have plenty of wants, right? I mean, do you want anything? Yeah? I would think so, right? Is he lying? Is he telling us some kind of hyperbole just to make us feel better? No. And here's why. David understood 2 things about God that we can't miss this morning if we're going to understand how to have some peace in our hope in God. And that is, 1, that it's the Lord who is our shepherd. By the Lord, David means Yahweh, the creator of the universe, right? Who has life in himself. God is life. And all things were made for him. That means that if we're with God, if we're in relationship with God, we have all things. We have life itself. And God is powerful enough to direct us that we might obtain that life, right? And the second thing is that the Lord is my shepherd. He's not a shepherd in the abstract. No, just like a shepherd takes care of his sheep individually, we sang about it, goes off for the one and leaves the 99 just to get that one, right? So the Lord is also your shepherd if you're in Christ, coming after you in particular, knowing your particular needs and wants and desires, the particular design that he has on your life, loving you in a particular and unique way. He is your shepherd. And we too can have peace knowing that he will provide for us because he combines perfect power and perfect love directed toward you and me. As we recognize that God, the God of the universe, loves you and is powerful enough to care for you, your level of confidence will go up as you place your hope in God for your future. It will lead to peace. If the first thing David says is that we will have peace because God provides for us, the second thing he says is that we will have peace because God protects us. Let's continue on in our passage. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. I could have illustrated that by kicking over my cup. Stupid joke. All right. First thing, God provides. Second thing, God protects. God protects. David comes up with a scenario, right? What is he talking about? He's talking about the worst situation ever. The worst conceivable situation. Even for a sheep going through the valley, right? Predators can come get you from the top, and pounce down on you, enemies in front of you. David is saying, even though I walk through the worst situation possibly imaginable. And what does he say? I'll fear no evil. What? Come on, David, let's get real, right? I mean, how can you say that? And he points us back to the same thing. God is my shepherd. He's with me in the valley of the shadow of death, and he's with me. The fact that he's with me makes it feel like I can have a feast in the presence of my enemies, a party on the battle lines. That is a crazy picture because we would never do that, right? But think for a second about the worst situation you could possibly imagine for your life. David is saying, I will fear no evil because God, my shepherd, the one who knows me and knows what I need and knows how to conquer this situation, he's with me. Sometimes I think about this scenario of feasting on the battle lines as like a little bit like playing backyard football, but your dad's on your team. You know what I mean? All your friends are there and you're always afraid of them, but you line up on the scrimmage line and you look behind you and your dad's there. And you're like, sweet, like we're never gonna lose, right? He's here. I mean, he could take all my friends at once and we got a whole team in him. It's gonna be okay. So the situation necessarily doesn't change, but the person that is with you does. I think that's a little bit about what David is saying here. He has such a high view of God and who he is and his power, and combined with his love directed towards me, that he's saying, I don't care the situation. God's my shepherd. He's going to be with me no matter what. He's not leaving me. He's not forsaking me. And he is strong enough for my enemies that are in front of me. Where in your life this morning do you need some peace? Where perhaps do you feel like you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death and you see no light at the end of the tunnel? Where do you feel alone? Where do you need to be reminded that God, not some abstract deity, but God, the God of the universe, is your shepherd. He is with you and will never leave you. He has committed himself to you for life. If David says the first reason we can have confidence in our hope in God is because he provides for us, the second is that he protects us, and the third is that he promises his presence to us. Let's continue in our passage here. Verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. David continues in his pictures, right? The first is of this perfect day for a sheep, right? Just utter provision, God taking care of him. And the second is this picture of the gloomiest day ever, the worst situation that could be imaginable. And David continues on and he says, how about my future? What's going to happen then? As I look into my future, I see scary things, right? But what does David see? Knowing that God is his shepherd. He sees goodness. He sees mercy every single day of his life. And in the future, he pictures this scene that he says, it's going to work. God will win. I will be with him forever. David, in this whole passage, is banking all of his hope on nothing less than God himself and God's loving commitment to be with his sheep, to be with you. David says, if I can guarantee that God is on my side and that God will never leave me and that God is powerful enough to work things out in my life that I might be with him forever, I can have some peace. It's going to be okay. I might be terrified. It might be scary. It might not turn out like I wanted it to. But God is my shepherd. I think one criticism of Christians could be that we're naive, right? That we don't take into account the reality of the world. It's a broken world. It's a scary world. It's a terrifying world oftentimes. And a lot of times our lives are a mess. Or at least very messy, right? And so our onlookers could say, how can you genuinely say that you can be peaceful in that? Isn't it naive? And the only reason that Christians can actually be peaceful is because we don't just make this stuff up about God. We don't just say, oh man, all right, God's good, so I'm going to be peaceful. Okay, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful. Right? It doesn't work if you've ever tried. No, we look to historical fact. In Jesus, we see one who has come to earth, done all that was necessary on our behalf, died, rose again, and ascended to the Father, leaving us with his Spirit so that we might be provided for, that he might secure our eternal salvation for us and give it to us as a gift. We don't just say God provides for us. No, he came and died so that we might have life. We don't just say God protects us and then we see lots of bad things happening and then are just like, well, he sort of protects us. No, we see Jesus who has entered into the valley of the shadow of death on our behalf and by himself, taking the wrath of God so that we might be part of his family, be called his sheep, be part of his family as his children. We don't just say that God will promise his presence to us and then just it's like this idea. We know that one day he will win. And that Jesus, in his death and resurrection, has secured for us the final victory. And we can walk into the most terrifying situations, not forgetting that it is still terrifying. It is still bad what happens. And we can be honest with that. But we can know that the Lord is my shepherd and I don't go it alone. He's with me. I think the first time that this passage just became bedrock for me, I was in my senior year of college. And we were just getting ready, to graduate. Chelsea and I were going to get married. I was going to start a new job and move to a new city and just kind of be an adult, and I was terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how we were going to make it. And I just remember so many nights just being like, God, what are you doing? And I know it's not a huge deal, like in the grand scheme of things, but for me, that was a valley of the shadow of death. And I felt alone, and I didn't know how we were going to make it out. And I remember all that I could do in my quiet times those days was repeat this passage. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. When I would get anxious, whatever I was doing in my life, those days I just said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And I didn't see it. But I just kept asking God that I would believe it and that it would be true, that he'd come through for us. And as you can probably imagine, he did. And I'm sure you've got stories like that, right? Where you just don't know how you're going to make it out. You feel so alone. No other hope will give us confidence, right? I mean, we can all attest to that by all the crazy things that we've done and tried to find hope in, right? No amount of people-pleasing is ever going to come through for you in the end, Someone's always going to be disappointed with you. No bank account, no job, no success or failure, your kids, nothing. It's not going to work, right? We all know that. Though we still go after it. We still place our hope there. But I think if there's any exhortation for us this morning, the next time you find yourself saying, all right, it's going to be okay, or it's not going to be okay, think about the reasons why you're saying that. Think about what you're placing your hope in. And if it's anything other than God, right, look to Jesus and say, God, I don't know how to hope in you right now, but I need your help. Please be my shepherd. And the more situations we do it, the more situations we place our hope in God and watch him come through for us, even though it might not look like we expected, the bigger a picture we will have of our God, who is our shepherd. The more we will see his power and love perfectly combined, directed toward us. The more we will know him as our shepherd. Let's pray together.